Welcome to the Doctor's Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dianne. Think of the podcast as a mobile doctor's lounge where we take some time out and explore topics that doctors are interested in related to what it means to be a doctor in today's world and creating a rich, satisfying, and meaningful life, as well as making the healthcare system better for doctors and patients. So, if you are a doctor, you'll feel right at home, and if you aren't a doctor, you'll get a better understanding of doctors and what we think about and talk about. I know you will enjoy the conversation. Let's jump in. Hey everyone, welcome to the Doctor's Life podcast. We are actually doing part 2 of a 2-part series with myself and Dr. Katrina Ubell. We are talking about non-clinical career paths and entrepreneurship. In our last episode, we were talking about whether or not to leave medicine and the decision-making around that. And this time we're talking about after you've decided to leave clinical medicine, what does that look like? So non-clinical career paths and entrepreneurship, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let me just briefly introduce Dr. Katrina Ubell. You've probably listened to her on the last podcast, and she has her own podcast called The Weight Loss for Busy Physicians. She's a pediatrician that's turned certified life and weight loss coach, and she helps busy women physicians permanently end their weight loss struggles through coaching and the latest weight loss research. She lost 55 pounds herself, utilizing the tools that she teaches, and now she weighs less than she did in 9th grade. Dr. Katrina left clinical medicine in 2015, and since then has launched a very successful life coaching practice, again, where she helps the docs with their weight loss struggles through coaching. So you've been doing that for about 3 years now.
A little over 2, yeah.
A little over 2. So what we thought we'd talk about today are what both of us are doing, briefly how we left and what we're doing now. You guys already kind of know my story, but for those of you that haven't met me, we'll just go over it super brief. And then we'll talk about our experiences on the non-clinical side of it. And just with the point that the grass can be green, but you can't assume that it's going to be greener when you're leaving. So you've been doing this for about 2 years now after leaving your practice as a pediatrician, yeah?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Well, I have been, it's been over 6 years since I left clinical medicine, and I actually have dual roles. I still work as a medical director full-time, and then I won't even say half-time. It's kind of like my other full-time passion job is I do coaching for physicians around stress, burnout, and career change. I founded the Physician Vitality Institute, and as you guys know, I'm the host of the Doctor's Life podcast. I love what I am doing now, but it wasn't the easiest journey. Some of the things that we had talked about in our last episode, which I hope you all listened to, are some of the things that you need to consider before you leave. One of the things that I had to consider was financial. Definitely looking at my finances. I had been thinking about leaving medicine for a while, and at that time I was an anesthesiologist, which, as you guys know, tend to make a fair amount of money. And my husband at that time was in academics. He still is, and he's doing very well in what he does. But I was making more money. So I was paying the mortgage. I was paying for private school. You know, there's a lot of things to consider. And so when you think about leaving clinical medicine, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to leave, and that's that. Like, you need to be able to have a plan moving forward. What would you say about the financial aspects of it? You can talk about your situation.
So I was really, really lucky in the sense that by the time I was considering leaving medicine, we really did not need my income. I mean, it was nice, but it wasn't required at all. And so I had always kind of joked that I worked twice as much as my husband and was paid half as much. But by the end, I was getting paid maybe a quarter of as much, maybe 20%, I mean, a fifth. And so that made it, I kept trying to come up with reasons why I needed to stay. And I was having a really hard time coming up with them. We really didn't need the money. We were fine without it. It did make me a little nervous, the idea of, well, gosh, really, we're putting all of our eggs in one basket. What if, a million things happen? What are we going to do? Looking at life insurance, all of those things, right? What would I need to do if God forbid he died? Would I really be able to live the life that I wanted to live? What kind of job could I have? It really was something to think about for sure. So luckily, because we didn't have any educational debt anymore, we didn't have other massive debt besides our mortgage that we were dealing with, we really were just kind of like, okay, so the money thing doesn't really factor into it, but I don't want to just gloss over that because it really does factor in for almost everybody. And so it's very important, I think, to take a hard look at that, because I think that one pitfall that I see with other physicians who are interested in possibly leaving medicine and then doing something similar to what I do or doing some sort of coaching is they have goals for themselves that they want to be making within a year what they were making as a doctor. Now, depending on, that's like a huge variable, right? Like obviously as a pediatrician, I made way less than you did as an anesthesiologist, but what I don't think people understand is how, you might earn, it's possible that within a year you might have revenue that actually equals that much, but you will not be paying yourself that much at all, like not even remotely close to it. And one thing that's helped, I believe, in the success of my business is the fact that I didn't really need the money. I have not paid myself actually that much because I've then reinvested the money back in the business, which helps it to really grow and take off. Right. So you don't have to do that, but if you want to increase your income potential, it's a good thing to do. And what I mean by, my expenses are very low, but what I mean by that is marketing, right? You have to get your name out there. How are people going to know that you're there and, that you have a service to offer if they don't know about you? And so I've had the luck to be able to do that. But I will also say that I'm in a pretty large coaching community through the school that I went through, over 200 coaches who are actually doing the business. And I really don't want this to come across as me like tooting my own horn, because I don't mean it that way. But I think people sometimes look at the rapid success that I've had and then they look at that and go, yeah, okay, I'll take what she's got. Like that sounds great. And they don't realize that I'm really kind of this weird unicorn in the industry. Like it for most people require, even the really successful coaches, it has not gone as quickly as it has for me. And I will take some credit for that because I have really invested in myself and in the business, and I've worked very hard and I've just done the work, right? Where a lot of people don't. But I just think it's very important to be realistic about what you can create. It's kind of what we were talking about, like the good, bad, and the ugly. Right. And, going, okay, well, sure, I can leave this job, but how will I stay in my house? And if you have a family, right, like how are you going to keep things afloat? Most people are not really willing to cut back on their quality of life, right? Kind of we get accustomed to this level of wealth and to accommodate the fact that they're not making that much money. That's of course an option. Most people aren't really interested in it. So sometimes you need to keep working your day job for a while, possibly even years, while you build up the rest of your business until you get to a point where you can transition over. And if you can have saved up a bit of a nest egg that can float you in that transitional process, that's going to make, the best difference for you. It's a really growing field, coaching. And so I certainly never want to discourage somebody from, or even just entrepreneurship, I never want to discourage somebody who really feels driven and motivated and like this is just their passion and they want to do it. But you also have to just recognize that even making 6 figures in your business, like it sounds like, oh my gosh, 6 figures. Maybe if you're single and you like have a small house and you live in a low cost of living area, like maybe that's okay, And so what we usually tell the coaches going through the program that I went through, which I'm now a coach instructor in, is we tell our new students, what you should plan on is being able to earn back your initial investment in the coaching in that first year.
Yeah.
which depending on where you go, right? I mean, $10,000, $20,000, something like that. That's just in 1 year. And that first year, I mean, you're working to get to that first $100,000 of revenue. You've got to hustle. And I did it too. I mean, after I got over myself. So let me just back up and say one other thing. Because I didn't need the money, you would think like, oh, that's so nice. You didn't need the money. Well, then guess what story I had? You don't really have to do this.
Yeah.
So whenever something was hard or uncomfortable, or I didn't really feel like doing it, maybe I just need to go do some puttering around the house or something, right?
Yes.
And then it was finally at a certain point, I actually got some coaching on that thought. And I realized, you know what, that may be true, that I don't have to do it, but I want to do it. And I'm not showing up like I want to do it. So if I want to do this, then things need to change around here. And that it was like a complete switch for me. And I got to work and I really treated it like a business. This is a job, like I am the business and I run the business, but I also work for the business and I want to show up in a way that I won't fire me.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. Well, I think what you said is really helpful for not only for people who may want to be coaches, and I get approached by people all the time. They're like, oh, well, I want to do what you do. Like, tell me, what you do. You're right. It's a lot of work. You have to consider that how you're going to continue to have income coming in. And it's not just for coaches. This is for all kinds of entrepreneurs, or inventors. I meet, like, doctors are smart people, right? So you invent something and you want to promote it because you think it'll be helpful and you want to develop it. And I remember before I left clinical medicine, like I said, I did get some coaching. And one of the things we talked about was, what is your economic engine? And so you need to have that in place. So if your economic engine is a nest egg and you have that and it's all good, then great. If your economic engine for a while is a spouse, then fantastic. And, I should mention that around the same time I was leaving clinical medicine, then my husband's career took off in academics. And so he had a significant promotion. And so we were able to make it all work financially. Or you need to decide, what style of life you would like to have, there definitely have to be some decisions made around that, because you need to have that income coming in regardless. And I like that you've shared how real it can be in business, because whether you're an inventor or whether you're going into some other sort of entrepreneurial way of living, you definitely have to be able to expend the energy for it and the time for it and the money, the advisors. It's just amazing how much it can cost to get yourself launched.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur.
And if you have, say you have a day job and this is your side hustle and you have a family, you really have to think about it. And I'm not saying it's not possible. It absolutely is possible.
Totally
My
possible.
favorite stories is the woman who started Aiden and Ane, those muslin blankets that everybody uses on their newborn babies. I mean, she had 4 children, was living in New York City, working full time for The Economist, doing sales, like selling ads, and building this business completely on nights and weekends.
Yeah.
And she didn't even leave. And she didn't even tell anybody at her job that she was doing this, because she never wanted them to think that it had somehow negatively impacted her ability to do her job. She said she met her sales goals every single month. She was always top in her day job. And, I just love that sense of integrity when I hear her tell that story of how she wasn't just like, well, I can kind of phone it in at the day job so I can get the paycheck. And then this is my real passion project. No, like, you show up here, you do a good job, you show up as the, mom, wife, spouse, sister, friend, whatever that you want to be. And then you get over yourself and stop telling yourself that you don't have time or energy or whatever for this project, and you just do it, right? You stop, you get off Facebook and you start actually figuring out how you're going to get this invention into the world that we all need, or, creating this service or this product that is so important, and actually getting to work and doing it. I think I never knew I had an entrepreneurial bone in my body. My grandfather was a serial entrepreneur, and I always thought it's so interesting how that just didn't carry over to like anybody. Turns out I had it. I just didn't know. But what I think is there's such great things about being an entrepreneur in terms of being able to create whatever you want, do whatever you want. I said in the previous episode how I felt in my pediatric practice, like there was such a lack of growth. Oh, there's growth opportunities right and left when you're an entrepreneur. I'm not lacking.
Isn't it the truth?
In growth opportunities ever. I am constantly coaching myself and working on my own experience of my business. I will tell you, I want to be totally open and raw here. When I really first started getting major traction in my business, I was totally going back to overworking again, just like I did in my practice, trying to over deliver. I was the person who stayed late and would talk to, I remember one time missing bedtime with my kids. I was just answering all these phone calls, and literally this family was calling me because they wanted to know what I thought about bunk beds versus 2 separate beds for their children. Like that was like their question they had to ask me about. And I was like, I don't care. Like pick whatever you want. Like just like, really? Like, this is what we're doing? Or like, should these 2 kids go in this room together or should these 2 kids? And it was just so funny. It was just like, at that moment, I was like, really? But I was like, oh yes. Oh yeah. I mean, outwardly giving them all the time they needed. And I was doing the exact same thing in my coaching. And it wasn't until I was coached on this where I could see that I was telling myself that they needed all that contact with me, but I was needing that contact to feel like secure, to feel like I was really helping them. I was going right back to the same bad habits that I had in the past because I hadn't really worked out what they were all about. So it's very easy to overwork as an entrepreneur. In fact, most entrepreneurs, not just physician entrepreneurs, but most entrepreneurs just in general, overwork. They don't take days off. They work nights and weekends. They're just working, always working in the business. And luckily, my coach really helped me to nip that in the bud immediately. And so it's been a process, but I now am at a point where I really have drawn that line for myself. I do not coach at night anymore, except twice a month. I do 1 call for each of my groups that's live. And I do that because physicians can't. Because some doctors who can't ever get on a daytime live call. And so I'm happy to do that, but that's planned. And I don't work on the weekends anymore. And that has changed, like absolutely changed my experience of my business. I was getting to a point where I was kind of sometimes, okay, I'll just work, but I only work when the kids are in school and also sometimes when they're around and I'm kind of ignoring them and, like, wait a minute.
Yeah, that I have to finish at night. I'm just going to do this 1, 2,
one more 3, thing. Oh, I just need to respond to this
emails.
Right. And so it really comes down to setting work hours, holding yourself accountable. If you're not good at that, entrepreneurship is going to be difficult for you. Yeah. Like I don't have time when I'm working to be inefficient and not productive, right? Like I have a list, I need to get it done and I don't have time to mess around. Like it can't take more time than that because I've given myself these limits. It's like with that Parkinson's law, whatever the work that you have to do will expand to fit the space that you give it. The time frame that you give for it. Right. So if I felt like it was okay to work nights and weekends, then guess what? I was working nights and weekends. The work was filling that space. As soon as I really constrained that down, then I had to come up with a solution. How was I going to get all the work done in this time frame? And lo and behold, the solution was there. I just hadn't seen it before. So it really is so amazing because I can do whatever I want. If I want to change something, I just do it. Literally I have this little meme that I created that's sticking right to my computer and says, how can this be more fun for my clients and me? That's the question I'm always asking myself. Like, how can I improve this? How can I make this better? How can I get them the results that they want? How can I be having as much fun as I can in this process? And so I never have to answer to anybody else. Like I get to do whatever I want to do. But interestingly, I was just reading a blog post by, I guess he's the primary developer and kind of meditation expert of the meditation app called Buddhify.
Yeah.
And he was writing about how difficult it can be to have his job. Like people think like, oh, you run a meditation app. It must be so zen and amazing all the time. He was really candid about how stressful it is. Now his wife works in the business, how they worry about making ends meet. They worry about their business model. I mean, he's like, I think I'm a lot better than most at handling it, but he's like, I'm not nice sometimes. I really sometimes struggle with this. And I thought, thank you for being so open about this because people then have this perception when they compare, like, oh my gosh, look, she's got this amazing life and she's helping people. And yeah, all of that's true. But I work.
Yeah.
Like I go to work to create that. There's a lot behind the scenes that goes into creating that. And I get so much satisfaction out of that, but you have to know that you're signing up for that as well.
Exactly. I agree. And I've spoken briefly about my situation where I work a day, and I'm kind of in that transition period where I wasn't able to just stop cold turkey and then switch into doing an entrepreneur. I'm still transitioning over into doing more and more of my passion project as I'm able to. And I did want to speak to just briefly for people who aren't interested in entrepreneurship, because it's good to know yourself. And as we were talking about, a physician coach can help you figure this out. Not everybody who wants to leave clinical medicine is interested in entrepreneurship or know whether or not entrepreneurship is a good fit for them. So one way to be able to know that is to try it out as you're still in your day gig. You can start to try on some of these things. Like we were talking about, I did coach training while I was still an anesthesiologist, and I realized that I really loved it. And I started doing coaching on my days off to lock it in and see like if it was something that was really a good fit for me. You can work on your invention on the side, go to trade shows on the side and kind of get a better idea of whether or not that would be a good fit for you. Whether or not you want to decide to be an entrepreneur or not, take that piece away. Just keep in mind too that I get people that approach me and I say, oh, I'm a medical director. I work from home, and I get to pick up my daughter from school and take her to school, and I let in the plumber when they need to, and I work in jeans. And, there's a lot of good things about the non-clinical job that isn't my entrepreneurial passion. A lot of benefits to it. There's, the pay is good, the benefits are good, there's a lot of reasons to be in that practice. But keeping in mind too, though, that all sounds great, but it's still work. Like I was hired to do specific work because of my expertise in medicine. And there's definitely still those expectations that you are going to be at work at a certain time. Mine is a little bit more flexible, but for just speaking in general, there's still jobs where you have to go into the office or, where the expectations are still that you are going to work at the best of your ability. So we're just saying that non-clinical work is still work. It's not
right.
like
people have said this to
the
me.
Grass is greener, and it's like it can be green and you can love it and it might be a good option for you, but in and of itself, getting back to what we were talking about in the first episode and knowing yourself, working with somebody and working out all the options, it's a good time for you to find out what your strengths are, what fits you, where you want to grow, but still expect that you're going to work. You're going to be expected to work, and you may be asked to do things that are going to stretch you or things that you don't necessarily want to do. I mean, that's just work. I mean, that's not
right. Kind of like, you can have as many days off as you want. Well, right. I mean, in theory, yeah, but like you do have to actually show up in the business. So can you create a business where you're not working 80 hours a week? Of course you can do that for sure. Yeah. But then when you're working too, you have to be super efficient. I find that so many of the physicians that come to me saying that they're overworked are so inefficient in their time that they are qualifying as being quote unquote work time, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, they are like with their charting, they're so inefficient that you can't even really say that that's really work time, right? Like they can get their current practicing job to be so much more enjoyable just by working on some skills that they can extrapolate to any job that they have. Like people have said to me, like, I don't know how you can work from home. And I would constantly be in the kitchen looking for something to eat. And I would just constantly I'm like, what's so funny about that is I literally don't ever think about doing that. Right. Because I'm working, right? Exactly. My brain is not thinking about, the food in the pantry. Like my brain is at the task at hand. When you plan your day, then you are doing the things that are required of you, and then you get done, right? Like I generally eat lunch very late, and I eat it right before I go and get my kids, because I don't even want to have to think about stopping and eating food and taking a break. I just want to sit down and do my work and work.
Yeah.
But, going back to the strengths, like one thing that I really learned about myself is how much of an introvert I am. I always say that I'm an outgoing introvert. I love being with people, but like we met at a conference. It was super fun. I just loved coaching people, talking to people. I went home like I had cement in my head. I was so cooked, so done that I did not manage my energy well at all. And it was just confirmation again of why I felt that way in my practice. I could not keep up that kind of level of energy and interaction with human beings on and on, day after day, and then coming home and trying to do it with my family. There was no time to actually feed me. So the amount of time that I spend in my house alone working on stuff for myself, even when I'm coaching some of my clients, but it's maybe more typing back and forth, it's feeding me. Like that's that time that I need so that I am at my best when I am spending time with my family. I'm not thinking, oh my God, all I want to do is go hide in my room by myself. Aren't I a horrible mom?
Yeah. That's it. And that's exactly right. And that's what I teach docs like that are in practice about energy management and making sure that you're doing the things that, if you're doing things that are depleting you, you need to be doing things that are rejuvenating you as well. And all the
I don't even think I had insight into what rejuvenated me, really.
Right?
Like I used to always love to cook. That was part of my weight issue, is I would spend all weekend in the kitchen just cooking up a storm, making tons and tons of things. And it was sort of a way that I showed love. It was a way that I entertained myself. It was kind of a hobby for myself. But what I now know was that it was really a good way for me to get away from everybody.
Right.
Like I wasn't the mom who's like letting the kids measure out the oats for the cookies, right? Like I was like, okay, go over there and play. I'm cooking right now. It was such a great way for me to get away from everybody, sort of, without it seeming like I was just completely not present.
Exactly.
And now I'm like, oh, that's why I like to do that so much. Fascinating, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah. So finding
can help you figure out, right?
Right. And finding the ways that and so regardless whether you're in medicine or out of medicine, still finding that balance and making sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Being on the road going to trade show after trade show may not be at all what you want your life to look like.
Exactly.
So, okay, if that's the case and you have a great product, what are other ways of marketing it or something?
Yeah. Like that? Yeah. Well, this has been a really fascinating conversation. I know I've really enjoyed it, Katrina.
It's been so fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I hope you guys have all gotten something out of it. I'm sure that we put so much in there. There's got to be something that you've gotten out of it.
Some juicy tidbit for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dr. Katrina Ubell, it's been such a pleasure talking with you about non-clinical career paths and entrepreneurship. Until the next time of the Doctor's Life podcast, you guys, I hope everybody stays happy and healthy and balanced. So, all right, guys, take care and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening today. If you like what you've heard, be sure to hit subscribe in your podcast app so that you won't miss an episode. You can also read show notes, get links, and contact me by going to drdianne.com. That's www.drdianne.com. And docs, while you're there, take the Physician Vitality Assessment, which will help you more clearly see if you are at risk for burnout. Hi, it's Dr. Dianne here. Are you a doc that's interested in or required to help other doctors around stress, burnout, and physician wellness? Perhaps you're a physician leader who is in a position where you need to be able to know how to counsel other doctors, a medical school or residency program director, or just a doc who wants to make a difference and advance healthcare by helping other docs to be healthy in mind, body, and spirit. Well, you're in luck because the Physician Coaching Academy is now enrolling. It's an online-based training program where you will learn together with other doctors how to become a coach for doctors like me. Want to learn more? Go to www.drdianne.com talkwithdradianne.com. That's www.talkwithdranne.com.